I must be the dumbest person on earth. My wife had just given birth to a brown-eyed redhead boy, and sirens were blaring in my head. The baby had very fair skin with the most adorable little dimples. Yes, it turns out there are stories that need to be told. And my wife has hers now. It's time for me to find out the truth. Hi, I'm Jeff Patterson, and my wife is a one and only Jan. I never thought my wife would cheat on me. I love her with all my heart. Before we got together, Jen had been married to Hugh for 8 years. They had one son, Hugh Jr. Hugh Sr. was never a problem for me, because he really didn't care about what was going on with Jen. I know this because Hugh is one of my Lord brothers. From the start, Hugh told me, "Jeff, you can't turn an expletive into a wife." I was furious, and of course, I wanted to take him outside. But when we got out there, Hugh raised his hand and stopped me, then asked why we were fighting. I replied, "Hugh, I can't let you call my wife an expletive. I know she's your ex, but I'm her husband now." You stood there, looked at me, and then said, "You're right, Jeff. I'm sorry, but as a brother of this lodge, when the time comes, you will need my help. Don't be afraid to ask for it." He shook my hand and went back inside. From that moment on, you became my friend. He never held anything against me, and even supported a few of my emotions. I had no problem with him. Jen, on the other hand, hated you passionately at large events. She went out of her way to compete with him and his wife. One day, Sammy was talking to several of the lodge members' wives. When Jen approached them, she asked, "How's that scumbag doing?" Sammy smiled and replied, "Very well, he just brought me a Range Rover. It's a few years old now, but it's good for the family." Jen scoffed, "I don't see him." "He's probably at the bar," Sammy replied. "No, he's outside, talking to the lodge president about building a clubhouse of the kids." With those words, Jen turned away and walked over to me saying, "We need a new car, a new Range Rover, and it needs to be fully loaded." I shook my head. You had just told us how he traded in his truck to give his wife a Range Rover. He said Sammy needed it for the kids and work. You always did what was required. He drove an old Ford F-150, rusty and worn, but still running well. I told Jen money doesn't grow on trees. But once you get back to work, you're going to have to help pay for it. Jen didn't work while she was married to you. After the divorce, she found a job. But now she was unemployed again. She grumbled a bit and went off to talk to the other wives. I sat down and talked to a few of the brothers in the lodge. We chatted for about an hour, and then I started looking around for Jen. I spotted her about 10 minutes later, dancing with one of the lodge brothers. I walked over to join her. Jen said, "Hi, honey." "How are you doing?" I replied, "Nothing. I just want to dance with my sexy wife." I cut in, and the lodge brother left. I asked Jen, "Do you like it?" She replied, "Yes, but it would be even better if you took me home and put me to bed." I didn't need to be asked twice. She grabbed her purse, and we headed for the door. I waved goodbye to my Lord brothers. As soon as we got in the car, Jen was on top of me, then screamed, "Drive expletive." It was so good I almost hit a nun. It's a good thing I didn't, because while the sex was incredible, it wasn't exactly helping me on my path to heaven. As soon as we entered the house, she bent over the kitchen table and then looked at me and smiled. The next morning, I was at the Range Rover dealership. Everything was going well for us. Work was fine, the cottage was fine, and the sex was incredible. Then Jen dropped a bombshell on me. "Jeff," Jen said, I'm 3 weeks pregnant. The first thing that came to my mind was 45 years old and pregnant. By the time this baby is born, I'll be on welfare. Oh, my gosh, that was a shock. I already had 2 kids and Jen had Hugh Jr. Hugh Jr. is now 25 and has a child of his own. Sandy, my daughter, is a senior at LSU, and my son Jacob is a junior at Ole. Miss Jen, are you sure? I asked, yes. I'm sure I just got back from the doctor's office. Are we having a boy or a girl? I asked, that's what we need to talk about. She replied, do you really want to have another baby? I asked her, what do you want? She responded, we need to think about it. Needless to say, it was a long night. The next morning, as Jen was leaving, I asked, what do you have planned for today? Jen looked up and replied, I don't know what's going on at the lodge. After I do my hair, I'll give you a call. Okay, sexy. I love you, and I'll talk to you later, baby. I said then. She was out the door in a flash. About 20 minutes later, the phone rang. Hello, I answered. Good morning, is Mrs. Patterson at home? The caller inquired politely. I replied no. But it's her husband. What can I do for you? Your wife left her credit card here at the front desk. We have informed her so she can pick it up at the front desk. The caller said, what the hell is a front desk? I asked, confused. What hotel are you staying at? I can come by and pick it up myself to save her the trip. We're at the Hyatt Regency East. It's a very nice hotel, the caller responded. I said to the man, thank you, sir. Your card will be waiting for you at the front desk. Why did I think my wife had to be at the Hyatt? I called Visa and asked for an itemized statement. They asked me for the card number, but I didn't have it, so I replied, I don't have the number the girl on the phone asked me to hold. While she spoke to her supervisor, the supervisor came on the line and said, Mr. Patterson, one of the cards is her personal card. We can't send you that invoice. I asked, how is this bill paid? The supervisor explained, payments are split between the 2 cards on the 60 to 40% basis, and both are paid on the same bill. I said, I'm the one paying the bill. So either send me the statements or don't get paid. The supervisor agreed to check and promised to get back to me. About 15 minutes later, I received an itemized statement via email. It was worse than I thought. Jen had been going to the hotel twice a week. For the past 6 months, I couldn't think of a single reason why Jen would need to use a hotel. So now I was going to do something I had never expected. Hey you, I need your help, I said. He replied, Jeff, come to the lodge and bring the suitcase. Bring the suitcase. I don't want to drop it. I just need help, I said. He repeated, bring the suitcase. I grabbed a travel bag from the closet and headed to the lodge. Once there, I looked around the empty house. You opened the door and said, come in. We walked to the security office. And in a room filled with about 15 monitors. Cameras were everywhere. Hugh cleared his throat and said, Jeff, after you see this, I don't know if you'll be able to stay married. Think carefully about what you want before you watch this. I said, she's pregnant, and I have to know. If I don't, I won't be able to move on with my life. He understood the tape was already loaded, and he pressed play. The first thing I saw was Jen on her knees, engaging in a compromising situation with a waiter. She had been at it for at least an hour. Then she started cleaning herself up. She reached into her purse and pulled out some kind of bottle to rinse herself off. No wonder she always carried a large purse with her. It was a kit of a frequent traveler. You said I didn't just tell you to take the suitcase, Jeff. I'm giving everything to you. It's your marriage, so you decide for yourself. If you want to work things out, then do so. But if you want a divorce, then use what I'm giving you. There were probably 30 tapes and 20 discs. Hugh shook his head. She was a very busy girl. The video footage showed several of the Lodge brothers and almost the entire staff involved with Jan. The staff would be fired, you continued. But the brothers would have to face the board of trustees. Think long and hard, but do what's right for you. You added, I spend the next 20 minutes processing the information and making my decision later. I found myself sitting in my attorney's office. We discussed everything, and he started the process. Then he explained that I'd have to give up some of my assets, but not half of them. The house, for example, was mine before the marriage. So it wasn't considered joint property. She can keep her cell phone, he said, but I don't want you paying spousal support. My lawyer said she would get a summons next week. I told him, could you deliver the papers to the Hyatt next Wednesday? I spent the rest of the week trying to clear my head. I told Jen I was at the lodge, but the truth was, I was trying to sort things out. Wednesday came quickly. While Jen was busy with her affair, a few of my brothers' wives and I were packing up Jen's belongings at the lodge. My cell phone rang and the caller ID showed it was Jen. Hi, I said, Jeff. What's this divorce? Where did you get the papers delivered? Jen asked. I didn't answer her question, but she immediately went on the offensive. Look, Jeff, you can't just leave me. You love me and you can't live without me. You said it yourself, I shouted back. I can't live with this mess. But there are plenty of options here. I've got to go, Jen. A truck just pulled up to take your belongings to your mom's place. The last thing I heard as I was signing off was a protest. Things moved quickly after that. Jen managed to convince the judge to delay the divorce proceedings until after the baby was born. She started attending church. And then she told me that Hugh had drugged her and set her up. She repeated this so often that I began to question my own judgment. Then one of my friends who wasn't involved with the lodge took the tapes to a video lab to have them analyzed. The lab confirmed that they were authentic. When Jen found out, she changed her story. She claimed that she must have been drugged, and then she added that the devil made her do it. She started praying at church, seemingly hoping the baby would be mine. Now here we are in the courtroom waiting for the DNA test results. The judge asked me, "Are you sure you want the results?" "Yes, Your Honor." I replied. The judge opened the results and looked at John. "Do you know who the father of this child is?" "Yes, Your Honor." "It's Jeff Patterson," she said. The judge looked at Jen, shook his head, and declared, "The game is over, Mrs. Patterson. Your husband is not the father of this child." The judge ruled that I was entitled to 85% of the property division. Since we had only been married for 3 years, I was required to pay Jen $75 a week for 2 years, and she was awarded $11,000 of my savings. But she had no claim on my retirement account. I also had to cover the attorney fees. But at least it was finally over. It's been 2 years now, and tonight marks the last spousal maintenance payment. We're having a final party at the lodge, and every one of my lodge brothers was there. You pulled me aside and took me to a back room. "Jeff, I want you to meet the lodge board of directors." The head of the board stood with his back to me as I entered the room. When he turned around, I almost spat out my drink. "Your Honor, what are you doing here?" I asked. "I'm the chairman of the board," he said, grinning. "What the heck?" Both Jen's lawyers My lawyers and even my boss were all on the board. You said, Jeff, I told you once not to be afraid to ask me for help. You weren't afraid, and now it's your turn. I've been elected to the board, and one day it'll be my turn to help someone in love. And with that, I made my last payment to Jen in small coins. I walked into the bank requesting $75 in pennies during closing time. The tellers were furious, but honestly, I couldn't help but enjoy the small bit of justice.